Myself is Shankara Rajendra Prasad, President, All India Lawyers Union AP State Unit, and also Bar Council member of the state of Andhra Pradesh. Good morning to everyone. We will start our meeting. All India Lawyers Union AP State Committee has been conducting these webinars during this lockdown period. Nearly we have conducted 10 webinars with legal luminaries and experts to increase the values in the profession and also to democratize the lawyers and also make them social responsible ones. I request all the participants to mute their phones. Now today's subject is the role of judiciary in pandemic. On 31st March, a public interest litigation petition came before the Honorable Supreme Court with regard to the migrant workers. The Supreme Court simply believed the representation of the central government and keep quiet. But the practical problems, we are all aware about these migrant workers. In spite of that, the Honorable Supreme Court is not kind enough to reopen the public interest litigation to know about the pathetic conditions of these migrant workers. Somehow better, Andhra Pradesh High Court and Madras High Court passed some orders to benefit these migrant workers. Today's subject is that's why role of judiciary in pandemic. Before commencing the meeting, I request our All India Lawyers Union National General Secretary Sree P.V. Surendranath to advance his welcome address to this meeting. Thank you each and everyone. Now I request Surendranath to speak. You have to unmute Surendranath.
Today's chief guest, my brother, Senior Advocate Dushyant Dave, other friends Rajendra Prasad, Nara Srinivas, Kolli Satyanarayana, Parsharthi, and all other activists of ILU, dear friends. Today is a great occasion because after inception of this program, now it reached a pivotal position that you got none other than Dushyant Dave, the great president of Supreme Court Bar Association. In this tumultuous period, lockdown period, when the constitutional courts are shirking the responsibility, accountability to the constitution as well as the people of India, we just can't a better person
Speaker is on mute.
friends.
Unmuted.
This occasion, of course, is a creative use of lockdown period by AP committee should be congratulated because this is such a creative utilization of time. A lot of disturbances. This occasion is not only a creative utilization of time, but a better attempt to democratize the profession itself. It is obvious that our society is a knowledge society, and so knowledge is power. To share the knowledge is one of the missionary activities. Lawyers should take it up. And now all responsible senior lawyers and former judges, senior citizens, and other experts are taking up that responsibility, discharging that responsibility. So it is a welcome thing. The second aspect is that though we could democratize legal education, the profession is not that much democratized so far. So the best method or best way to democratize this legal profession is to equip ourselves, to help the junior members to equip themselves by acquiring new and new knowledge, new and new facets of a development of law. So on this aspect also, we are doing an exemplary thing. Without acquiring sufficient knowledge, we may not be able to discharge the responsibility and duty to our clients as well as the courts and ultimately to society. So in that respect, we are doing a missionary activity that to democratize the profession itself. So that is more important during this lockdown period, because due to lockdown period, the junior section of our profession definitely suffer a lot. To help them, the first thing is to give opportunity, and second thing is to equip them legally and otherwise. So once again, I congratulate this AP committee for this mission, and once again I wholeheartedly welcome Dushyant Devji to this function. Thank you. Thank you.
Now I request our Chief Guest Sree Davegaru to advance his speech, and I request all the participants to mute their microphones and don't cause any disturbance in the meeting.
Good morning, friends. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Nath, Mr. Rao, your other colleagues, for this initiative and for inviting me. It's really a pleasure and privilege. The subject that you have chosen is one of the most important and sensitive subjects which deserved and deserves to be debated again and again. And I intend to debate with you my thoughts as to what really is the situation about. Judiciary's role in pandemic. You have been seeing for last 8 weeks what this role has been. Virtual silence on the part of judiciary. The judges across the country, barring some exceptions in some small matters in Karnataka, Chennai or Gujarat, the judiciary has left citizens to fend for themselves. This is not what the Constitution commands. This is not what the constitutional morality demands. Constitutionalism requires that judiciary oversee the functioning of the executive and the parliament. And if it doesn't do so, then one can safely conclude that judiciary has failed. And let me begin by telling you that judiciary has indeed failed not only the Constitution of India, but the citizens of India in a rather, I would say, sad and unacceptable fashion. Constitution provides various rights, fundamental rights and other constitutional rights. Fundamental rights are something which are sacrosanct. Article 13(2) of the Constitution categorically provides that these fundamental rights cannot in any manner be abridged or taken away by the executive. Article 32 of the Constitution is a very interesting provision. It guarantees to the citizens right to move the Supreme Court of India. And that right is for what? not in abstract, not in emptiness. That right is for enforcement of the fundamental rights of the citizens. Right under Article 14, that state shall not be arbitrary. Rights under Article 19, which are various rights which are guaranteed to the citizens, including, for example, most important in the migrant crisis, right to move freely across the nation. Right in Article 21, right to life, and that right to life is life with dignity. Are we seeing that life of hundreds of millions of citizens today? Their dignity has been completely taken away. They are virtually naked on the streets of every city and every village and every highway of this country. And yet, as Mr. Rao rightly pointed out, the Supreme Court simply said, how can we stop them from walking? I asked myself a question. If the judges had seen their grandchild walking across a road, suddenly seeing a car coming from the other side, would the judges have not rushed to save their own grandchild? Every citizen of India is a grandchild of the Supreme Court of India. And judges have a pious constitutional duty to protect every citizen. They just can't sit in ivory tower blindfolded and see day after day after day the miseries of the citizens of India. And this is where one must understand that the constitutional framers really wanted that judiciary should supervise and control both the executive's actions and inactions. My COVID-19 crisis has proved that the government's actions have been disastrous. It is unthinkable in a country like ours, where there are maybe hundreds of millions of people working as migrant labor in various parts of the country, that the government, the Prime Minister, would choose to bring about a lockdown giving 4 hours notice. And the Supreme Court just sits silent and allows the miseries to befall on the citizens. Hundreds, maybe thousands have died. Nobody has an account. Nobody will ever have an account, because this is a country where nobody in government is accountable. The judges have a duty to make them accountable, and the judges are singularly failing in that duty for last 8 weeks running. And I hope and trust and pray that judges will now at least start acting as per their mandate. Remember, our constitution has a very interesting provision, constitutional oath. That constitutional oath requires judges to act, discharge their duties without fear or favor. I am unable to understand what is it that is preventing judges from really acting. You know, during the Constituent Assembly debates, you all perhaps may be aware that Dr. Ambedkar was asked that what is the most important article of the Constitution of India? And Ambedkar said that if I had to put my finger on one article which I think to be the soul of the Constitution of India, it is Article 32 of the Constitution, right to move Supreme Court. It's a guaranteed right. Ambedkar says during Constituent Assembly debates, what's the purpose of giving rights if there is no remedy? Now, judges, sorry to say, have either never read the Constitution, or if they have read the Constitution, are not willing to follow the Constitution. There is no other conclusion that one can draw in the circumstances. The same Supreme Court let the citizens down when demonetization was announced by the government, Prime Minister himself, with few hours notice. Millions and millions of people, Indians stood in lines. Hundreds died. Thousands and millions were ruined. For what? The entire exercise of demonetization proved to be a disastrous failure. It did not achieve the objective. It did not unearth any black money. Government has never come out with the real figures. But what really is talked about is that government received more money than it was supposed to be in circulation. That's the rumors. Now, we don't know what's happening. What I am trying to drive at it, that judges cannot sleep over these things. I can recite maybe 100, 500,000 judgments of the Supreme Court, including constitution benches of the Supreme Court, wherein Supreme Court has again and again and again said that fundamental rights are sacrosanct. The right to move the Supreme Court is sacrosanct. The Supreme Court has not just powers, but the duty to enforce those fundamental rights of the citizens. All those judgments, do they not bind the Supreme Court itself? The law laid down by the Supreme Court binds everybody, including the Supreme Court. It cannot be said that it doesn't bind. It binds only the high courts and the subordinate judiciary and the executive and the parliament. It certainly binds the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has singularly failed to follow its own law. Nobody for a moment says that Supreme Court should interfere in day-to-day functioning of the executive. Certainly not. There are functions which are very beautifully divided between the executive, parliament, the legislature, and the judiciary. And each segment of it should not interfere in the functioning of the other. But when the other segment is failing, when it is unable to protect the citizens, when citizens' rights are taken away in a completely arbitrary and harsh manner, the judiciary has a duty to step in. Now, this is what if the judiciary had done, it would have helped tremendously. All that judges had to do was to have told the executive that we are here, we are watching you. We are watching you. Your actions and inactions are hurting the nation, are hurting hundreds of millions of people. 1 billion plus people are suffering because of you. We will not allow this. Protect yourself. I mean, if the government had given some time to citizens to move freely before the lockdown actually came into force, do you realize that for the Janata curfew that the Prime Minister called on 20th of March, he gave 48 hours notice to people, whereas for bringing a company gives 4 hours notice, was completely shut down. Now, if that happens, people do, but walk on the roads with their shoulders on their heads, trying to the safest place that they can their life, their village, and their little hut in those villages. Now, this is going on today. Even today, it is going on after almost 8 weeks. So it is something which now it's not just the migrants problem. Every other issue that the government has handled. Look at the COVID-19 treatment in hospital after hospital. The way patients are being treated today, there are serious issues. Their basic human rights violated, and it is bound to happen. We have very poor health infrastructure in the country. There are too many people now demanding that infrastructure and too little to offer by the government. As a result, serious imbalance is taking place between the number of patients and the number of beds and number of doctors available. Now, this could have been easily avoided had the government had thought in January itself to bring about, stage-wise restrictions to fight COVID-19, which was declared as pandemic by China on January 23rd itself. We did not have waited for the WHO to tell us what the problem will be. We knew it because we are the poorest country, one of the poorest countries in the world. We have the second highest population in the world, and we have very poor health infrastructure. We have huge migrant labor. We have very thick populations in urban centers in the country. Now, therefore, all these should have been, the government should have been conscious. The Prime Minister should have been conscious. His Council of Ministers should have been conscious. And his advisors, the top bureaucrats, should have been extremely conscious. But if they were not conscious, if they didn't care, should the judiciary not be conscious? The judiciary can intervene in the garb of public interest litigation in all kinds of matters. But when it came to the crunch, the judiciary has failed. This is the same judiciary which failed us during emergency in the famous or rather infamous judgment in ADM Jabalpur, where the Supreme Court said that fundamental rights of citizens can be suspended during emergency. And let's now analyze. We are not in emergency. The fundamental rights are not suspended. And yet, the Supreme Court has suspended the effective enforcement of those fundamental rights by simply saying, oh, what can we do if they want to walk on the road? No, judges had to tell the government that we will not allow a single citizen to walk. Provide mechanisms so that everybody can walk in an organized vehicle, army, paramilitary forces, and the police be used if the trucks and buses are not available. Not the railway. Use perhaps goods trains for them as quickly as possible. Do something about it. It can't be that the judges would not talk about it. So, role of judiciary during pandemic is an extremely interesting role. It is the role of healers of the wounds, healers of the scars, healers of the healing. Unfortunately, the judiciary has lost the opportunity to function as one. And this is where it's important to understand that unlike many constitutions in the world, ours is a documented written constitution, which very beautifully provides rights and duties and functions. Now, everything having been provided in black and white by our constitutional fathers, I mean, it doesn't take much for judges to understand where they stand. They know it. So what is it that really has influenced the judges over, I mean, in completely abdicating their duties? It's very surprising. The judiciary is singularly or systematically compromised. You know, if sadly, if names of the judges of the highest court find place in suicide notes of former chief ministers, if former Chief Justice of India is accused of sexual harassment, then what is going to happen? The executive is bound to take advantage of the situation and slowly and steadily weaken the judiciary. That is why it's important that we have outstanding judges within the judiciary. They have to stand up. And I am really sad to tell you that even these outstanding judges who are in majority perhaps, they are remaining completely silent. What prevents individual judges of the Supreme Court from taking suo motu cognizance of the matters? They should not worry that the Chief Justice is the master of the role. Let them confront the Chief Justice's power in every High Court and the Supreme Court and say that Chief Justice, if you are not willing to act, we want to act. Let them at least make citizens feel that they stand with us. They feel for us. Maybe it may not be enforced by the executive, which naturally is not willing to have it enforced. But they must stand up. Instead, what happened? The Supreme Court passed a judgment during lockdown, reminding citizens that if you violate the directions of the government issued under the Disaster Management Act, you can be sent to 1 year's jail. Now, is this the role of Supreme Court of India to remind citizens? I feel it's really sad that Supreme Court, instead of reminding the executive that you, Mr. Executive, are failing in your constitutional duties and we will pull you up. Instead of that, the Supreme Court used its platform at the invitation of the government in a self-serving PIL to remind citizens that we will send you to jail. Now, this really is an extremely sad commentary on this functioning of the judiciary in the country. And if, you have to understand one thing, that if the Supreme Court functions in this fashion, every High Court is bound to take the cue. They have, therefore, there are judges, outstanding judges in every High Court. I mean, Karnataka High Court, Chennai High Court, Gujarat High Court, Bombay High Court, Delhi High Court, Punjab High Court. I mean, High Court after High Court, have outstanding, capable and fearless judges. But they are remaining silent because they know that if they pass any order, the Supreme Court is bound to upturn it next day at the request of the government. Now, this is unfortunately a systematic collapse of the judicial power of the state. Now, if the judicial power collapses in this fashion, I think the citizens have lot to worry about. It is therefore important for the whole country. A difficulty is that the media today does not focus this aspect at all. Nobody in media has questioned once on a serious debate, why is it that the Prime Minister declared the lockdown by giving simply 4 hours notice? Why is it that prior to that notice by the Honorable Prime Minister, the railways had virtually been stopped? Why is it that the government did not think of start taking effective measures from January? Nobody is questioning in media. Why? Because the media also, unfortunately, has ceased to remain fiercely independent. There are pockets of independent media, but by and large, I mean, look at this controversy. I mean, which arose out of Nizamuddin Markaz, where people were systematically abusing the minority community for having spread COVID-19. Did anybody ask a question in media, especially this so-called, loud media, that 300 to 400 attendees of that Nizamuddin Markaz were allowed by the government of India to enter India in March from those countries where COVID-19 had already spread? Now, nobody wants to debate it, and judiciary has remained completely silent. I have said in one of my articles that we criminalized COVID-19 to punish section of our society. Now, is this fair? We are a plural society. Our constitution does not discriminate amongst people on the ground of race, caste, or religion. It is therefore important for judges to have taken upon themselves to find out that why is it that this is happening. I mean, and then, executive will always try to, take away your focus or your attention from the real issues by spreading this kind of disinformation against certain communities and certain sects of people. It is for the media to be responsible, and if media is not responsible, then I think the judiciary has a greater responsibility on its shoulder. Pandemic is something where judiciary, leave aside their role as a public interest, protector. What about the day-to-day delivery of justice? Now, in India, judiciary is not computerized. It is not e-friendly. It is not e-hearing friendly. Why? Because over the years, the judiciary never really thought of that. Virtually every country in the world is, today, computer revolution has taken place. In India, the lockdown has virtually brought judicial functions, normal judicial function, to a standstill. Now, this could have been easily conceived by judiciary long back, that a crisis might come. And if a crisis comes, what do we do? But even after the crisis has started in last 8 weeks, have you seen effective measures by the judiciary to really bring about e-revolution in its functioning on, priority basis? The video hearings which take place in the Supreme Court, I mean, I have attended some of them, and many of my colleagues have been telling me are unsatisfactory. Chief Justice of India himself said the other day on a public platform that it is not satisfactory. Now, day to day, this functioning of judges is virtually at a standstill. As a result, people are suffering. There are millions of litigants who are waiting for their rights to be determined, and judges have no way to do it. The executive is not going to give them the funds. Today, government is virtually, running for money. Yes, it doesn't have the money. It's not going to give it to the judiciary. Now, how is judiciary going to do it? They have to think out of box. They must think of going to public platforms, private players, persuade them to give this technology as quickly as possible, maybe at throwaway prices or maybe for free of cost. In Supreme Court Bar Association, we have initiated a dialogue with private players so that at least my bar members can take the advantage of the e-revolution, and we can have digitization, e-filing and e-hearings at a reasonable cost. And I must tell you that some of the best private players from across the globe are willing to offer their technology, perhaps free of charge, for a 6 months to 1 year period. Now, these are things which the judges have to think. I must tell you with great regret that there has been no dialogue between the Supreme Court judges and the Supreme Court Bar Association how to energize the Supreme Court's functioning. And I have no doubt that this is the position in virtually every high court in the country or every subordinate court. The judges and the bar have to sit together. The pandemic obliges, creates an opportunity for better understanding, better working relationship between the bar and the bench. We are part of the same system. It can't be that the two cannot sit together to find solutions to these challenging times. Crisis always demands very critical solutions, and critical solutions can come only with out-of-box thinking. So that is something which really has to be done. So pandemic has ample opportunity for judges to rise above the occasion and prove that the judiciary is not helpless. The judiciary is not going to sit helpless. The judiciary is active, proactive, as it is expected to be, because in good times it is good enough to be proactive and decide whether the dog should be on the street or not and things like that. It's all right, but it's in the times like this that you need to be extraordinarily proactive. I mean, can you imagine every migrant family which is walking on the highways? Do we understand as a nation what pain they must be going through, what suffering they must be going through, and what feeling they must be harboring in their hearts about this nation which has completely failed them by leaving them to fend for themselves? Can today state ever compensate their sufferings, their feelings, their losses? It is impossible. I mean, look at the cruelty of the situation, that while walking, the poor migrant workers and their families die. And what do the politicians do? They offer doles of 2 lakh and 5 lakh to the families. Is this the approach? What is going to, I mean, ultimately the family which has lost their loved ones, can you ever compensate them? Can you ever bring them back? Will your 2 lakh and 5 lakh rupees doles going to really heal their wounds, their losses? It is impossible. This is where judiciary must step in even today and force the government that every migrant worker will stop where he is walking, and within minutes, government will provide alternative, effective, suitable transportation along with food so that they can reach safely to their homes. I mean, can you imagine that we are seeing that on the borders of the state, they are putting barriers, completely overlooking what Article 19 says. I have a right to move freely everywhere. And they are all stopped at their borders in thousands. They don't have food, they don't have problems. Seen time and again, not only in UP, but even in Kerala, that groups of them are being sprayed with insecticides. I mean, God forbid. I mean, is this how we should really treat our citizens? And is this how should the judiciary just sit there and do nothing about them? So I feel that pandemic really gave a great opportunity to the judiciary to win over the hearts of the people, to get back into the position of respect which it commanded for a long time. Yes, people may not publicly speak about it, but if you see social media today, there are thousands and thousands of people who are absolutely critical about judiciary. It's a different matter, judges may not read them. But time has come for us to remind the judges that people are not thinking well about you. And this is not good for us as a nation. I love my judiciary. I'm sure every one of you lawyers also loves the judiciary. We want our judiciary to be better. We want it to be effective. We want it to give results. We want it to protect citizens in every possible way. We want it to stop the executive from taking arbitrary actions like 4 hours lockdown and demonetizations. We want them to act. But when? Unless we have a collective voice. See, let us understand, if the judiciary's conscience is dead, it is our duty and responsibility to really stir up that conscience and bring it back into active opposition. We as lawyers have a great duty. We are failing also. I mean, just don't think that by holding few webinars, we are doing a great duty to our citizens. No, I also take responsibility on my own shoulder that yes, I have failed because I have not been able to effectively do anything. But unless the bar unites, unless the bar takes a joint stand, in every city, 500 to 1,000 lawyers should get together and go to the courts and persuade judges that for God's sake, enough is enough. Now act. Unless that happens, I think we will not be able to galvanize the judiciary into action. When history is written, remember, let's all remember, when history is written 100 years down the road, we will all be condemned. We will all be condemned. And it will be written that this generation of Indians failed the nation. And this is something which we must understand, that ultimately, we can't just sit and, watch things happening. Yes, we must speak as much as possible so that public opinion is generated. It's very important to generate public opinion. People must know, and people should not talk in whispers. People should talk publicly, openly, without having any fear. Criticism of judiciary is not contempt, mind you. This is constructive criticism, objective criticism. This is an appeal, an open appeal to beseech the judges, the judiciary across the country to act, for them to realize what their status is, what their powers are, what their duties is, what their role is in a constitution. In a modern constitution like India, I mean, the politicians have their own role. The parliament has its own role, but the judges have a greater role to watch both of them. And we must tell judges that you are not watching over them. So this is something which we must understand. I personally feel that pandemic will continue for some time. We don't know when it is going to happen. We don't even know when the next pandemic will come. Let's pray that it never does. But crisis cannot be simply overlooked by us as lawyers, by us as citizens, by the civil society, and certainly by the judges. And therefore it is important for every segment of the nation, every part of the nation, for them to think and to find solutions to the problems. Unless we do that, we are failing the nation, and we will be failing the nation so badly that we might even be considered by historians 100 years down the road that India was no longer a democracy where rights of citizens mattered. It had become only a nation to protect those in power. And this is not a good thought in our mind. It should, I mean, we have to be really, I would say, ashamed that history will write in that fashion in future. It will be extremely brutal against us. You read history today of the past, and the historians always, brutalize the contemporaneous leaders or citizens and populations and masses, because ultimately, don't forget that only those in power will be held accountable. The whole society will be held accountable, because whole society has to act. See, it's something which is very important, because ultimately it's the culture of the society. It is the mindset of the society. It is the hearts of the society which will be discussed. And when that is discussed, I mean, I have no doubt that we will have minus points. So I really feel that we should, that judiciary must do two things. Must immediately, act as per its constitutional role. Not just in public interest matters, but also in ensuring that day-to-day delivery of justice is re-established as quickly as possible. The ordinary cases are heard immediately. Cases of workers, cases of teachers, cases of farmers, cases of tenants, cases of even business community, cases of criminals who are lying in jails without their bail applications being heard. Why? Even a single day's wrongful confinement, how are we going to compensate as a nation? Habeas corpus petitions, petitions challenging the status of Jammu and Kashmir. All these, I mean, there are thousands of other issues which we should be debating about. So the judges have to really start galvanizing themselves. They must bring about an immediate computer revolution within their system. They must discuss with the members of the bar. They must discuss with the best minds in the country, management experts, other experts who can advise them as to what is to be done. Social experts, because sociologists are very important in a time like this. They are the ones who will tell you and me and the judges as to what is it that society needs to do. How are you going to heal the wounds of the people? We have to know from them. We have to talk to them. So this is the kind of an, I would say, overall role. I mean, there is nothing which should stop judges now. They must think in every direction. They must walk in every direction. And then only they will be able to serve this nation as they have taken the oath to serve this nation. I don't see any other way judges now can serve the nation better. Thank you very, very much.